So yeah, the sermon today, instead of calling it the storm, I thought of on the last minute to call it adventuring through the storm. And I was kind of thinking about this last week while we were in Florida, um, because Florida to us is starting to become our home as well. And to get down to Florida was it was like an adventure. Supposed to be a 10-hour drive, turned into a 15-hour drive, especially with two teenagers in the back seat and multiple stops we made and having the slowdowns and wrecks and traffic and yes, it was an adventure. At the same time with that, kind of like in Matthew 14:22 through 23, where it says Jesus made the disciples get into a boat while he went up to the mountainside and prayed by himself later that night alone. And we got to Florida. We left early that morning, got to Florida later that night, and it was basically the calm before the storm. The next day is when the rain started, and with that, continuing in Matthew 14, and the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. It's a ghost, they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, take courage, it is I, don't be afraid. So throughout the rain, we all just sat around and just hung out, read, watched TV. And even as it got worse, and here at home, if somebody says anything about a tornado or a strong storm, Rachel panics, but we all just went in the hallway like it was nothing. And, God kept us calm and kept us all safe. But the strong stuff didn't hit till later on. And it was funny because around 3:30 that morning, Rachel woke me up, and she's excited, taking pictures and filming the rain and just having a blast. And I can just picture Jesus just sitting there saying, "Yep, you're calm, all right." Then it all passed, and then so like in Matthew 14:28 through 31, so Lord, if it's you, Peter replied, tell me to come to you on the water. Come, he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid and beginning to sink, cried out, Lord, save me. Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. He said, you of little faith, he said, why did you doubt? Well, we all knew we were being safe. Jesus was with us the entire time. And so when the storms finally passed and everything was okay, uh, me and the kids, when Rachel went out on the beach and the they were strong, the waves were crashing, and we didn't go out to the water but shin deep. And even with that, the waves are so strong, it knocked me and Megan down. And um, but God kept us safe. And even with that, like in Matthew 14:32 through 33, and when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshiped him, saying, truly, you are the Son of God. So the last few days while we were there, after the storm was over, we all went out and had a good time, went to eat shrimp and took pictures by the sunset, and everything had calmed down. And it's like kind of like in the last verse I wanted to talk about, which was Matthew 8:23 through 27. Then he got into the boat and his disciples followed him. Suddenly a ferocious storm came up on the lake so that the waves swept over the boat. But Jesus was sleeping. The disciples went out and woke him, saying, Lord, save us, we're going to drown. He replied, You of little faith, why are you so afraid? Then he got up and rebuked the winds and the waves, and it was completely calm. The men were amazed and asked, What kind of man is this? Even the winds and the waves obey him. So it's like everything around us, it went from the category 5, destroyed a lot of homes and floods and a lot of damage, but he kept us safe through all of that. And in life, as the waves crash around us, as we struggle to get through things, Jesus is always going to be there, calming the waves and calming the storms as we adventure through life. And that's all I have for today.
So let's see. I was just about to say that the storm that we went through was a literal storm, but basically, all of us face storms in life that basically literal storms can seem really small, real insignificant compared to a financial storm or a storm with relationships or a storm from basically just any kind of a heartache that can happen. A grief can overwhelm us, like Peter stepping out on the water, and then all of a sudden he began to sink. And that's the way our emotions can overwhelm us at times. And so Jesus is the master of storms, not just the literal storms, like is in this the story about Jesus walking on the water, but he can lift us up from our grief, and he can lift us up out of the financial turmoil. We just have to trust him. And that was just my only comment on that. So good job on your sermon, Randy. And I'm glad to see you being faithful to continue to bring these sermons every week. And this is good for your training. So praise the Lord.
Thank you.